Hi everybody and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today we're going to be talking about the word that you need to look out for if you want to avoid ending up with another anxious or closed-minded woman. And I don't know. I'm not doing the intro. I like talking. I don't like small talk of any kind unless it's just completely tangential and then, kind of interesting or funny, at least to me. But anyway, before we dive into the meat of this, as I would like to do, please do subscribe. The most recent one was about why your wife fantasizes about other men in the off chance that you're one of the 99.99% of males in this situation. Okay, so why do men get divorced? Women initiate most divorces, but I've had podcasts on why men initiate divorce, and one of the big reasons is because the wife is anxious and closed-minded. This is not just in the bedroom. Guys are not actually that shallow. They usually don't leave just based on sex. Not that that would be shallow, but you know what I mean. It's usually not just based on one thing of any sort. The woman who's closed-minded and anxious in the bedroom is usually closed-minded and anxious when parenting and when socializing and when making financial choices and everything else. It's a personality trait, and it's one of the few that men find aversive enough that they will actually initiate divorce. So then when they're back on the dating market, they usually want to look out for this. They usually don't want to end up in a situation where somebody's very constricted and anxious. And of course, women don't want to do this either, but there are higher rates of anxiety in women. What's wrong with me? And so I will get at the end to what the equivalent is in males if you're looking for the language that males use to indicate that they are anxious and closed-minded. We'll get to that. But first we're going to look at this in women, the words that women use, because women are more anxious. They have higher rates of anxiety. And this isn't to say that anxious people are bad or don't deserve to get married or anything. I'm just trying to help the people who are similar to my clients not get into a situation with somebody that they are not ultimately compatible with, which in the long term is much kinder to women who are anxious and closed-minded, such that they do not have beginnings of relationships that then end when the guy realizes it, and they end after more time in which the woman becomes more invested. Right? So it's better for everybody, for all human beings, to be aware of what their deal breakers are early on so that they don't get into relationships and get people's hopes up before eventually they don't stay in those relationships and leave the person disappointed. Okay, so what's my key word? What was the price of admission here? Well, it was free, so I can filibuster as long as I would like. Ethically, I could say a whole bunch of shit because y'all didn't pay for this at all. But I'll be nice. The word is comfortable. Comfortable. You're like, what do you mean? Comfortable? Well, let me give you some examples then. So if you say something like, want to try some Vietnamese food, it's near me, and she's like, I'm not comfortable going close to you on a first date, like driving to where you are or something. Okay. What about if you say, I don't know, do you travel a lot? And she's like, well, since COVID, I'm not comfortable with travel. Assuming that you're somebody who travels. And all of this, by the way, if you don't give a shit and you're fine with dating somebody who's anxious because you're pretty anxious and you think that people who take risks in this world are fucking dangerous and weird and you do not want to end up with one of those crazy motherfuckers, then disregard everything and just fast forward to my next podcast. But this is for the many, many men that I interact with as clients who do not ever want to be with somebody who is much, much more closed-minded and rigid than they are. So what would be another example? Well, literally anything in bed. I mean, if it's a honeymoon stage, she's not comfortable with this, she's not comfortable with that, shit, where do you think that's going? You think that's going to get better? A lot of guys actually do because of the word, comfortable. So they think that there's a level of comfort, definitionally, that the woman could get to, that they could, and here's the cognitive misstep, that they could foster a level of comfort that they could create unilaterally that would make the woman more comfortable with driving to his neighborhood or with, giving him a blowjob or with travel or with anything, So, but this is wrong. What she's basically doing is telling you, it's a code word, which she's not aware of. There's no world in which she's like, oh, I'm like totally anxious and rigid, but instead of, working on that or even understanding it, what I'm going to do is transmit this via code that only Dr. Psych Mom knows. No, this isn't, that's not going on at all. But what's happening is there has been a cultural shift, and I discussed this interestingly in the prior podcast about how likely it is for adult children nowadays to become estranged from parents who make them feel uncomfortable in any way. Comfort is like a huge thing now. But not for everybody. As I always discuss, there's a normal distribution of human behavior. So some people are like, man, people talking a lot about boundaries nowadays. That's interesting. And some people are like, finally the world understands that I feel nearly immobilized by anxiety and discomfort. And finally, I feel validated that this is like a cultural phenomenon. Yes, as many boundaries as I can assert, I now will. Thank God. Right? So you don't want to end up with those people if you are an open-minded sort of adventurous fellow that likes to, do shit in the world, right? Unfettered by anxiety and rigidity. So this comfort thing is super key to understanding it. So I go on Reddit sometimes, and for some reason, this sounds funny first, but I'm on the Tinder Reddit a lot. Now, that's not a Tinder Reddit where people share their Tinders, because I am happily married, but it's funny stuff about where people screenshot the interactions that they have on Tinder, which is fucking hilarious because, of course, what do I work with? Relationships, and most relationships start out with dating online, as I discuss, and so these early interactions are things that I help clients interpret, and that's basically what people are doing on this. So they screenshot an interaction, and then they crowdsource what people think about it. So this one guy, I got to do this from memory because I don't actually screenshot this stuff, but he says something like, I'm real excited for our date tonight. And the woman's like, me too. And he's like, prove it, winky face, right? So, I mean, I'm not a young person, but even I understand that this would mean in a best, wildest case scenario, she would post some sort of picture of her being physically excited by this, or she could just be like, haha, right? But she didn't do either one of those. She said, I don't have to prove anything to you. I'm not comfortable with you saying that. So then this poor dude, who's probably like, 24, posted like, was I wrong? Did I say something creepy? And then, of course, she promptly unmatched him. So there was no, no, I'm wrong. He apologized, as of course, you would if you're basically called like a creep implicitly. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean anything. I didn't mean to weird you out. And she's like, no, I just think it's better that we don't meet. And then she unmatched him. So she canceled the date and unmatched him because he made this vaguely sexual innuendo, right? I don't think that he really expected like a vagina picture of her being like excited, but I mean, like it was a joke, you know what I mean? But she said that it was uncomfortable for her, and then she said like, I don't have to prove anything to you. So this guy, nothing better could have happened in his life than dodging this bullet, right? Of this person who has like such closed off, rigid boundaries and such an anxious, negativistic worldview that she would perceive this comment to be threatening and discomfort provoking, right? I mean, thank God that this dude got out of that. Thank God he said it. Like, that's the best case scenario. But like, it spurred me to create this podcast episode because this sort of interaction happens so frequently. When I hear like that guy say, oh, well, she won't do this and she won't do that, she won't do this. But you know what? When she gets comfortable with me, man, she's never going to get comfortable with you because she's not comfortable in the world. Comfort isn't a thing for her. She is in a very anxious, rigid stance in which she is in warring opposition with various scary things that accost her at all turns throughout her life. And while I feel tremendous sympathy for anxious people and love to work with them and help them with anxiety, particularly if they're parents, because as I've said numerous times, I grew up in a very anxious, constricted household, so this no shit why I became a psychologist, right? But this super hurts your kids. They develop anxiety disorders. They have a negative worldview. They have to work really hard to change that, and then once you change it, of course, you want to help everybody else change it, like me. But But anyway, I love to work with anxious people, but I also love to help people have healthy relationships. And these women, you don't know if they're in therapy, you don't know if they know that they're anxious or rigid, stay away. If comfort and boundaries, I've done the podcast episode on the cult of preferences and boundaries. If somebody's talking about all their boundaries right away, get out. This is not going to be a laid back, flexible person. This person is prioritizing them over basically new experiences, like staying in their comfort zone, like the rigid constraints of their existing personality over exploration and growth, And does this mean that the girl that you date, the woman that you date, has to want to drive to your neighborhood for Vietnamese food? Fuck no. Definitely not. But I would 1,000 times more encourage you to date a woman who is like, I'm not driving 15 miles for a guy that I just met. Why don't you come to me? Cool. You got some healthy self-esteem there. You understand that, there's a lot of guys out there and you don't want to take X amount of time away from your kids or pay a babysitter for a dude that you may not even click with. Okay, women can do that sort of thing in the dating marketplace, at least at first, Fine, that's a choice, but that's not somebody who's scared of you that thinks that you're a serial killer. Those are two different women. And if you also very much want a woman who's always going to do things your way, then don't even date the first woman. Just only literally date the women that will drive to you. I mean, you're allowed to make any choices that you want when dating. If you have too many choices, of course, you'll end up with nobody. So you got to pick your things. Most guys that I talk to that are divorced would rather a woman that confidently doesn't want to waste her time before she has ever met you than a woman who is scared that you will somehow do something that goes across her boundaries by virtue of her being closer to your house or what have you. Fear, there should not be a lot of fear in your initial interactions. If there is, then that is the red flag that there will be levels of anxiety later on. And you will always be able to go back and be like, why am I stupid that she's literally saying the word scared, comfort, boundaries, all these things at first, and I somehow think that she's going to be flexible, laid back, and cool. Not cool, chill or whatever, I mean, they don't have to be chill in as much as, super laid back. They just cannot be terrified of the world for most men to be attracted, long term. Now, I promise you that I would also talk about what are signs that men are going to be rigid and anxious. Well, men don't usually say comfortable because they're just not as scared of the world. They do not think there's any possibility that you are going to roofie their drink on a first date or that you are going to physically force them into a car and take them home and murder them. They just don't think that. This, again, there are realities of gender. So men don't usually say, I am not comfortable with doing XYZ. However, they got a lot of preferences. They got loads of preferences. So if you say you want sushi, they'll be the guy who doesn't eat sushi. He doesn't try sushi. If you say it'd be nice to go to a show, he doesn't like that kind of music. If you say that you have to switch the time of the meeting to a different time, he can no longer do it. Get out. Get out. Life is too short to be with Mr. Negative. And the negativity is usually stemming from anxiety and an inability to get outside the comfort zone. Same as with the women. But the women use a rhetoric of fear, and the men don't. Because that's just a gender difference. Men are generally not as scared that a terrible thing will happen, but an anxious, for safety reasons, but a man can be scared that he will be distressed and uncomfortable by going outside of his comfort zone. He's not going to use the word comfort though. He's going to act as though he's like this alpha that can make certain decisions, but in reality, he's just showing that he's inflexible, and inflexibility is always linked to anxiety. And I have my OCPD podcast, OCPD, Are You Rigid as Fuck? And, a lot of men with OCPD, which is, not super prevalent, but people can have traits. Everything's along the spectrum. Men with OCPD, they show this really early in dating, but usually they end up with people-pleasing women who are like, oh, well, I mean, it's good that he has opinions, that's fine. No, he doesn't need opinions about everything. He should not have opinions about where you eat on the first date. It would be nice if he picked a nice restaurant, but if you say you're in the mood for sushi and he says, no, I don't eat it, there is zero way I will go to sushi. What the hell? So the women that will continue, by the way, to interact with these guys are women who had a rigid caregiver in their family of origin, and this shit is familiar to them. To dance on eggshells around a difficult person is familiar. So they'll be like, oh, okay, no problem. We don't eat sushi. I never eat to eat sushi again. That's fine. Sushi sucks. No, like sushi. That's your thing. You like it. You don't have to go to sushi, but you don't want somebody who's never going to go to sushi with you ever. Because why? Life is too short for that. So open-mindedness in general is the trait that most people in second marriages really need to be looking for, because women who do initiate divorce at higher rates than men also frequently divorce because the man is closed-minded. So this is generally a thing, that people divorce for. With men, it's one of the few reasons why they initiate divorce. And with women, it's one of the many. But and there are just the ones that I talk about in general. If that piqued your interest, I talk about reasons women initiate divorce in a different podcast. But in general, like, women don't like men who are afraid of growth and change, which is literally exactly what I'm talking about, or who in any way are, kind of difficult and mean, and in any way, emotionally or otherwise, abusive. I mean, I don't want to use the word abusive when it's not, but women will get to a place where they divorce at a certain age after they go back and they realize, oh, wait, he's always looking down on me. He's always talking to me like I don't know anything. And while they won't divorce when they're young, then when they're older, they have more confidence and they'll get out of that situation pretty quick. Of course, it's a super big red flag for a guy to in any way demean or diminish you in early interactions. Just get out of that. I mean, quickly. Don't try to prove him different or say that maybe he's having a bad day. No, if there's any like nasty kind of comment about your looks or about anything, certainly get out of Dodge immediately. But anyway, that's an aside. In general, the comfort zone, not going outside your comfort zone, not being comfortable, a fear sort of mentality, a victim mentality, none of it is good for eventually ending up with an open-minded and more open to the world, adventurous, not adventurous like bungee jumping, but you know what I mean. Somebody who will just go to any restaurant, That's like most men after the first marriage has ended, they got a kind of low bar for what it means for a woman to be easy to deal with. Basically, she just, can't hate them and needs to be open to experiences, including sex. So make sure that you hit those things, because it is a low bar, but there are women that really do not allow you to meet those criteria, right, in your next partner. All right, hopefully you found this interesting, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.